Origin.
Irish origin.
Yeah, don't forget it.
My brother is married to an Irish girl. My sister is married to an Irish girl.
Well, a lot of Irish went to the Caribbean, I'm sure you know. MashaAllah. It's wonderful.
Very nice people, Irish.
I'm so glad. Island people. I just wanted to thank you. My question was Gizwat al-Hind. I was one of those questioners, and you.
And my favorite Irishman is George Bernard Shaw. We have a book over here, a very small one. George Bernard Shaw and the Islamic Scholar. When George Bernard Shaw met with the teacher, my teacher, in Mombasa, and they had a dialogue, and it was recorded. I wrote a commentary on that conversation. It's there in my book. So George Bernard Shaw and the Islamic Scholar here.
Okay, so testing, and Sheikh will be speaking into this mic, right? And that one as well. Okay, so I think it's 7:08, so I'm not going to wait that way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're here in Ilford, East London, and those watching around the world later on YouTube, inshallah. We are once again very honored and blessed today to be in the presence of such a highly educated and esteemed scholar and philosopher. The Sheikh has authored numerous books which are on sale here today. All of the books written are on very important but overlooked topics, such as the shackles of riba, Jerusalem in the Quran, the release and attack of Yajuj and Majuj, the Jal, the Jasad, and Nabut al-Ard, and so many more. I'm sure there is more that I'm forgetting. Never forgetting to credit his teachers, especially the ones with the profile of Khidr, alayhi salam's wisdom and insight. One particular teacher being Maulana Muhammad Fazlur Rahman Ansari, who comes from a direct line of great philosophers such as Dr. Muhammad Iqbal and the great Jalaluddin Rumi. Allah have mercy on their souls. In times of incredible trickery and deception, when all of the social media scholars have cowardly failed us in their leadership in protecting our health and our iman, Sheikh Imran Hosein has been a bravely defined shining light, a beacon of truth in dark times, for hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of Muslims around the world. He reminds us of what it means to be a leader of the truth, even if it costs you your YouTube channel, or your school, or your home, or even your life. For decades, the Sheikh has blessed us with his insight by combining his monetary, geopolitical, socio-economical, and philosophical knowledge with Islamic eschatology, in which the Sheikh is responsible for pioneering and still appears to stand alone in accurately explaining the world we live in today. This appears to be of utmost importance, as it enables the Muslims around the world to snap ourselves out of our sleep and out of our own ignorance, so that we can think critically, preserve our iman, especially at the time of death. If the biological warfare talk here in Ilford made us think about how we want to spend our final moments on this earth, then today's talk should hopefully remind us about where we want to spend those final moments. A famous Russian philosopher and political commentator says in his latest book that we need to focus on this new tendency of returning to the earth, in which the majority of the population returns to agricultural practice and peasantry. We need to promote, help, and support the exodus from big industrial cities that should be extinguished so that people abandon them and live a real life on the earth. Because only the earth gives us real life and real access to being, and to save humanity from the real disease represented by post-humanism and new technology that tries to manipulate human genes to transform us, to mark us with artificial substances in order to control and cancel our culture from our very veins and souls. We should fight against this globalization. It may surprise you, as it surprised me, that these words are from Alexander Dugin, in direct opposition to Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum's transhumanist Great Reset. Please keep the questions after the talk short, concise, and relevant to today's topic. Without any further ado, Sheikh Imran Hosein, India's Muslims, the way forward.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, including the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As I greet you no longer from my sitting room in my home in the Caribbean island of Trinidad, but I greet you from Ilford in London, in Britain, with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and Eid Mubarak. Eid Mubarak to all of you. We thank Allah who gave us blessed Ramadan. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. No. But I hope we have all recited the whole Quran in blessed Ramadan, from cover to cover. Alhamdulillah, I see you shaking your heads. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. And that we have all recited the whole Quran in Ramadan the way that Allah recited it. And then commanded the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that you must all follow my way of recitation. Is this in the Quran? Is this in the Quran? Why are you not shaking your heads? Yes, this is in the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآن. And when I have recited it, O Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, you must also follow that way of recitation. You didn't know this is in the Quran? Huh? Where have you been all the time that I've been teaching? And then while reciting the Quran in Ramadan, for every day you had a juz means a part, and you never cut any surah in a part. You always recited the surah completely, and so you had the biggest test of all on the first day, when you had to recite Surah Al-Baqarah, and you were not allowed to cut. You had to recite the whole surah. So may Allah bless all those who recited the whole Quran in blessed Ramadan. Ameen. And now you must try to encourage others and teach others. And if you teach someone to recite the Quran the correct way, despite the critics, don't worry. Don't worry. If you teach someone to recite the Quran the correct way, and that person now keeps on reciting for all the rest of his life until the angel comes, look at the barakah. Sadaqatun jariyah. You keep on getting blessings even when you are in your grave. So now, we turn to this as the first talk that I have in Britain. And it is in connection with our brothers and our sisters in India who are now facing danger unprecedented in their history. Unprecedented in their history. So now then, would you show me by raising your hand those of you who were born in India or your parents were born in India? Okay, so we have about half the audience here. So you have some connection with the subject. And our topic is India's Muslims, the way forward. And I've chosen this topic because of so many Indian Muslims contacting me and begging me to do something. Apparently, the scholars of Islam in India, perhaps, have not been able to satisfy them. And they felt the need for me to bring my Islamic eschatological input into the subject. So I've been bombarded with lots and lots of requests from India, and some of them sending me emails informing me of what is happening on the ground in India and in Kashmir. I've been kept informed all the time. And I want to begin with one email from India, just one, on the subject of the plight, the unprecedented plight that India's Muslims now face. Bismillah. This lecture is not going to be long, but the question and answer session is more important than the lecture. Because it is in the question and answer session. Is this live? Is it being? Right, okay. So you might be able to get some people sending you messages from India while I'm speaking.
No, Sheikh.
No, okay. It is in the question and answer session, and my hearing is declining. So instead of you having to repeat your question 10 times, it's better that you write it out and send it to me, because I have to get a hearing aid, okay? Now then, it is your questions that you will pose to me on this subject that will help us to move forward in the directions which are the most urgent and important, inshallah. So be careful with your questions. Bismillah. Here is an email from an Indian Muslim. It's been a long time since last I sent an email to you, but I do listen to your lectures without fail for several years now. To again brief you, I'm the same person who was working abroad, and upon your advice, I left the job and came back home to India. And I am from Mumbai, the commercial city. I've started my own business here in Mumbai, and I've also started a mango plant garden and so on in the remote mountains. I just saw your YouTube video regarding the way forward, the lecture on the 6th of May. As I'm a local, I want to just share with yourself some information about conditions about Muslims here in India, which is becoming from bad to worse. And in the near future, I fear that there will be mass genocide, as hate crimes have already started. And they're killing and pressurizing the true voices, as is done in every fascist regime, to curb rightful voices. At the time of the Malhama, if people like me go to a village which is in the mountains, but as the Muslim population there in the village villages are sparse, so they might ransack 20 or 30 houses in a village. Some villages have only 5 to 10 houses, whereas in larger cities like Mumbai, Hyderabad, Muslim population is sizable in the ghettos. We as Muslims are not on one platform. We are divided on sectarian platforms. Some of us are Brahmins, some of us Tabligis, some of us Deobandis, some of us Ahli Hadith, and all divided naturally due to vast differences in culture and language in the north and the west and the south and the east of India. In spite of having 200 million large population in India, we are a divided community for the above reasons. I request you kindly to kindly guide us, we who will retreat in villages during the Malhama, Guide us in respect of local riots where our population is sparse, and also others who don't have religion and continue to remain in the cities. Guide us. What should we do? Your guidance at this juncture is very important, for our society is in a very trying time ahead. Take care of your health, and may Allah give you long life and good health. This brother is warning us of genocide. We can't take this email lightly. And my first comment is that one person cannot, on his own, deliver the answers as to what should be done. It has to be a collective effort with large numbers of scholars. But at least I would have put my small input, not claiming that this is the last word. And at all times, we must never lose faith in Allah. If we want to move forward, and if we want to get Allah's help, then Allah has said in the Quran, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغير ما بأنفسهم. Allah will not intervene to change your condition. No, regardless of how pathetic it may be, He will not do it unless you take the initiative, using His guidance to change your own condition. So if we are to get Allah's help to save our brothers and sisters, our children in India, from what He is talking about, genocide, it is clear that Allah's help will not come, despite all the dua, unless and until we use His guidance to change our own condition. No matter how bitter it may be for us, unless we accept our mistakes, we can't move forward. And that's the first stumbling block we face. The resistance of our people to accept that we have made mistakes. So long as they defend Muslim rule over India, for centuries, Hindu India, Muslims ruling over Hindu India, when Muslims are a small minority, and Hindus in India are the overwhelmingly large majority. And yet this small minority with armed force, with military power, is able to establish its rule over India and continue to rule over Hindu India for centuries. We have to ask our question, was that Mughal empire, which established Muslim rule over India, was it established in accordance with the guidance located in the Quran? If there are those who want to defend it, that we had the right to use war, weapons to conquer India and to establish our rule over India, well then don't turn to me to ask me for help now. Because Islam is not imperialism. And I'm reading now on Mughal rule over India. I'm reading the subject. And I have found that there is no evidence at all that the wars which were waged to establish rule over India were wars that were jihad, just war. A jihad or a just war is never waged Never waged. Unless and until you have explored and exhausted all possible peaceful means to resolve the problem. When you have tried everything and nothing has failed, then you fight. That is jihad. And jihad is when you are attacked and you are defending yourself. That is jihad. And the jihad is when a people are oppressed. Al-mustad'afina min al-rijali wal-wilani. People who are helpless, men, women, and children, and they are oppressed and they are crying out for help. Then you are you are obliged to fight, to liberate the oppressed, provided they are asking you to come and liberate them. Hindu India never ask Muslims to come and liberate them from oppression. And so Muslim rule over India was not established in accordance with the guidance of the Quran. And we cannot therefore defend it. We have to call a spade a spade. And we have to accept that the Hindu is right, he is justified in being very harsh and very rejecting Muslim rule over India, and it wants to have some revenge for it. We have to accept they have the right to do that. And we go wrong. So the first step on the road to resolving the plight and the predicament of India's Muslims today is to change our own condition using Allah's guidance and to call a spade and to recognize that Muslim rule over India was Islamic imperialism and had no part of Islam in it. And we have to apologize for what was done in the name of Islam and say, no, this is the religion of Islam does not condone what was done. More than that, the Mughal rule over India sometimes expressed itself with Mughal emperors and their armies destroying Hindu temples. So we have to answer the question. Prepare yourself, Indian Muslims. You have to answer this question, yes or no. Does the Quran permit you to go and destroy all the Hindu temples in India, yes or no? If this is your view, that the religion of Islam permits you, requires you to go and destroy the Hindu temples, as the Mughal rule did, then don't turn to me for guidance. Please go ask somebody else to help you. Ask somebody else to help you. I have not found this in the Quran. No. That you have this right to go and destroy the Hindu temples. And sometimes they will destroy a Hindu temple and build a masjid in its place to add some salt to the wound. So we say that in order to start the process of going forward, we ask the scholars of India who would listen to this lecture, or the message will be reached out to them, that the first step on the road to trying to resolve the problem is to establish that Mughal rule over India and the destruction of Hindu temples was not permitted by the religion of Islam. Once you're clear on that, then you say, we apologize for what they did, and we do not want to be blamed for what they did. So when that part of the state is clear in the hearts of the Hindus, that these people condemn what they did before, and these people condemn the destruction of our temples, it is now possible to reach out at least to some Hindus in India. Number two, when Britain was leaving India, and the signs were there, Muslims had to decide their future. And at that time, I'm afraid this lecture is going to last too long. I have to cut. The Muslims of India decided to respond with a movement which took India by storm. It captured the hearts of India, including the Hindus. Yes, it was a movement like no other, like no other movement had ever been in history. It was called the Khilafat movement. And it was led by men who knew the religion of Islam and who lived the religion of Islam. Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar, his brother Maulana Shaukat Ali, Sayyid Sulaiman Nadwi, Mufti Kifayatullah, Shoaib Qureshi. These were people who knew Islam and who lived Islam. But the leader of the Khilafat movement, Maulana Abdul Bari, was mashallah, what a scholar. What a scholar. And the leader of the Hindus turned to Maulana Bari, Abdul Bari. This is Mohandas Gandhi. And he said, but you want to get the British out? And when the British have been driven out, you want that the Muslims should live in accordance with Islam. But Maulana, we want the same thing. We want the British out, and when the British are gone, we don't want to have a secular state, secular republic. No, we want that the Hindus of India should live in accordance with Hinduism. So we want the same thing that you want. So let's just join forces. This is Gandhi talking. But Maulana, we have one condition to join with you. You have to stop killing the cow. Maulana Bari said, no problem. No problem. We respect your religious belief that you consider the cow a sacred animal. We living in your country, we respect it. And so the alliance took place. Hindu-Muslim alliance and fraternity. That was the way forward. That was the way forward. But then it failed. Not because of failure on the Muslim side. Because someone was hijacking the Hindu religion to take it on a different road. And they eventually assassinated Gandhi himself. And then came Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who never claimed to be a sheikh. Never claimed to be an Islamic scholar. He said, I'm educated in Britain as a lawyer. Good. But he said, I recognize also the way forward is Muslim-Hindu fraternity. And he was right. He was right. Like Maulana Bari was right. Like the Khilafat movement was right. And Muhammad Ali Jinnah then continued to try to struggle. He was known as the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim fraternity. Good. And he tried also. And he failed. Not because he didn't try enough, but because the leaders of the Hindu India, who had eventually disposed of Gandhi, they did not want it. And so Pakistan came into being. The mistake which was made, and we're paying terrible price for that mistake now. And perhaps you have to show compassion for Jinnah because he was ill. He would die soon. And there was tremendous amount of havoc and all these things in the partition. So you have to excuse him. The mistake which was made was that on the day that Pakistan was born, Muhammad Ali Jinnah should have addressed India and say to India, this was not our choice. It was not our choice to part from you. Our choice was to live together. Like the Khilafat movement and Gandhi wanted to live together. That was our choice. Your leaders did not allow us to succeed. But we say to you today that Pakistan is born. We say to you that that still remains our preference. And if ever the door is opened for us to talk, to try to reconcile and to live as Hindu-Muslim fraternity, we will be ever ready to enter that door. If this statement was made on the day when Pakistan was born, we would not be living with the predicament in which we are living today. We then have even more sadness. For which the Indian Muslims are paying the price. That from the day that Pakistan was born, it never had the freedom to have its own government. From the day that Pakistan was born, Pakistan never had the freedom to have its own government. With leaders who put Pakistan first and take decisions on the basis of loyalty to their own people. From the day that Pakistan was born, Washington has always consistently sought to determine who is in charge in Pakistan. And what we just had recently is yet another example of Washington taking over. You cannot appoint a chief of staff of the Pakistan Armed Forces without permission from government, from Washington. So Pakistan became, excuse my language, an American puppy dog. An American puppy dog. And India, Hindu India, was moving in a direction consistently in the same direction, that we will not accept the creation of Pakistan. We want to undo it. And if we have to do it by force, we'll do it. We do not accept Pakistan. So when Pakistan follows this monstrously foolish and sinful policy of being an American puppy dog, the answer is that the plight of the Indian Muslims become worse. Because Allah has prohibited Muslims in the Quran from ever being friends and allies of an alliance of Jews and Christians. And it is that alliance of Jews and Christians which today is known as the Zionist alliance and controls power in the modern way. It does not control power in Russia. It does not control power in China. But it does control power in the modern West. But the strange thing is, Allah in His kindness has blessed me to penetrate and understand certain verses of the Quran pertaining to eschatology, because I have done an enormous amount of work preparatory. I have done the planting, and now I'm reaping in understanding the Quran. So when I explain this verse of the Quran, as no one perhaps had ever explained it before, it made sense. Here is the verse, which shows that Pakistan's history as a puppy dog of America was in conflict with the Quran. And Turkey's membership in NATO is in conflict with the Quran. But the Darul Uloom would not listen to me. I've done everything I can to teach them, but they would not listen to me. As though knowledge is a package which is sealed, must not be opened, and you simply have to transfer it from one generation to another. If Iqbal had accepted that, Iqbal would never have been what he is today. If my teacher had accepted that, he would not be the Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, the light that he is today. Every year his profile is going higher and higher. If I had followed that methodology that they have in the Darul, I would not be what I am today. Here's the ayah. And remember, you never take one verse of the Quran in isolation by itself, because you could make a mistake. You have to study the Quran the way you studied it. Come on, help me. The stars. Which surah of the Quran tells you that? Come on, help me. Waqiyah. Surah Al-Waqiyah. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. And I take an oath by the position in which the stars are located. Good. Go to that and you will see. You must study the Quran the way you study the stars. Now let's go to this verse of the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a command. And when Allah gives a command, a Muslim must submit. If you don't, he'll throw you into the hellfire. You have to submit to him, otherwise you are kafir. If you don't submit to him, you are kafir. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have faith in Allah, la tattakhidul yahuda wan nasara awliya. Do not take Jews and Christians as your friends and allies. Ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd, who are friends and allies of each other. Did you hear that? Do not take Jews and Christians as your friends and allies. Ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd, who are friends and allies of each other. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. And whosoever from amongst you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you belong to them. You no longer belong to this ummah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah does not provide guidance for wicked people. So the Quran is speaking about an alliance of Jews and Christians which did not exist when the Quran was revealed. When did it come to pass? Only in 1897 was the Zionist movement formally established. But before that, the work was being done. And a Judeo-Christian alliance emerged in the world in full-fledged. It is this Judeo-Christian alliance that Allah is talking about in the Quran. It is a Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance. And this is 1897. And Pakistan was born after 1897 or before? Huh? How long after was Pakistan born? This is 1897. Haji? So where are the scholars? When Pakistan is born in 1947 to ensure that Pakistan is not embraced by that Judeo-Christian Western alliance. Okay? But the people of Pakistan understand. The people of Pakistan have their hearts in the right place. They don't want to be a part of the puppy dogs of America. They don't want it. But what about the chief of staff of the armed forces? What about the political establishment? And they take US dollars and they betray the country. And so there is a failure on the part of those who are teaching the Quran in Pakistan to teach the people the Quran, that Allah in the Quran has prohibited us from maintaining friendly ties and being allies with the United States of America and Britain and the West. Is there any alim in Pakistan who have used this verse of the Quran to warn the people, warn the country? And even though I've been teaching this for 20 years or more, none of the ulama will ever accept what I'm saying is correct. What more can I do? So the predicament of the Indian Muslims is now compounded by Pakistan's misguidance. If Pakistan was walking on the right path of not entering into the embrace of the West, as they did with something called CENTO, a military alliance, and now they're going back again into that NATO, but they're doing it through the back door. Because Turkey is a member of NATO, and if you hold on to Turkey's tail, as the chief of staff of the armed forces is doing, with these words, I'll never be able to enter Pakistan again, of course, but somebody has to speak the truth. If the armed forces of Pakistan are holding on to the Turkish tail, it means you're in NATO. If the armed forces of Pakistan are holding on to the Turkish tail, and Turkey is in NATO, you're also in NATO. Do I have to repeat it a third time? So how will Allah help you? How will Allah help you? If the Muslims of India are to get help, and Pakistan cannot help them, who will help them? Who will help them? All right? Finally, Muslims have been in India for centuries now. It is not for me to go into that history and find how they became Muslim, why did they convert to Islam and so on. That's not my field. My field is to accept that the Muslims have been in India for several centuries. But more than that, at the time when the British were leaving India, and at the time when the Khilafah, the Ottoman Khilafah, was being abolished in Constantinople, the Indian Muslim scholars of Islam had the highest status in the whole world of Islam. This was no mean achievement. The world of Islam respected Indian Muslim scholarship. So then how come? I don't know the answer. Why is it that the effort was not made more than it was made to enter into dialogue with Hinduism, so that you will have Indian, Hindu-Muslim dialogue on religion? Instead, what we had was Guru Nanak making an effort, and the effort failed because what he did was to create a new religion. I don't think he wanted that. I believe he wanted to build bridges. The effort was made by a Mughal emperor, Akbar, to create a new deen that he called Deen Ilahi. What? At least he was trying to build a bridge. I read a book recently, a very well written book, on one of the sons of the Emperor Shah Jahan. His name was Muhammad Darashuku. And here was a mind, an intellect. It was a very fine intellect, a searching mind, and a good heart. And he also was struggling to have dialogue at the highest level, spiritual dialogue between Islam and Hinduism. And he did achieve some success. His success was so great that the present Indian government of Modi has decided to honor him and have a road in New Delhi named after him. That is a sign of his success. But I am struggling with this subject, but I have a suspicion that it was because of proper methodology that they failed, all of them. The same problem that we have with the Darul Uloom. And that if they had followed the methodology which produced Dr. Iqbal, if they had followed the methodology which produced my teacher Maulana Fazlur Rahman Ansari, if they had followed the methodology which has produced my scholarship, then it is possible that you could have had productive dialogue between Islam and Hinduism, in which you have shown greater respect for the Hindu religion. And you have recognized in Hinduism that which the Quran recognizes to be truth. Is it too late for that to be done? I think so. I believe we missed the bus because we did not have the scholars to be able to establish that dialogue. I want to give you an instance of a Hindu Pandit in my native island of Trinidad. This Pandit was considered to be the leading Pandit in the country, heads and shoulders above everybody. And his name was Doon Pandit. And his son is the one who told me of what this Pandit did. In one of the towns of Trinidad, there was a hurricane and the roof of the masjid was blown away. The Pandit lived close by, and he went to the Imam. He said, Imam, your masjid roof is gone and Jummah is coming. I've come to offer you the mandir for your Jummah. Salatul Jummah. So the Imam said, Panditji, thank you for your offer. But how can we perform our salat in your mandir with all these, what do they call, murtis, idols? Panditji said, no problem, I'll remove them all. I will remove them all. The Pandit removed all the murtis, cleared the temple, and made it a place where Salatul Jummah could be held. The Imam then accepted the offer, and the Salatul Jummah was conducted in the Hindu mandir for 6 weeks. After which the temple, the roof of the masjid was repaired and they went back. I then found a book written on Doon Pandit in Trinidad, and I got the book. And I read the whole book. And there's no reference to this in the book. They left it out. And his own people were very angry with him for what he did. But here is the heart of the leading Hindu Pandit in Trinidad. And so, if we are to make an effort to establish dialogue, and we show respect for the Hindu religion, show respect for it. We judge people by their conduct, not just by their beliefs. And we find people whose hearts are not corrupted with hatred for Islam. And we were to establish dialogue with them. I want to suggest to you before I end that this would be a good start, if it's not too late. Finally, let me end with a warning from eschatology. The Jewish religion has been hijacked by the Zionist Jews. And their conduct and their behavior is contrary to the truth which has come from Nabi Musa alayhi salam. The Christian religion has been hijacked in the West to such an extent that a man can now marry another man and get a marriage certificate. The Hindu religion is hijacked today by Modi. His is a warmongering government with eternal hatred for Islam and Muslims. I feel sad to have to speak like this, but this is the truth. And wherever this lecture reaches in India, Hindus should recognize that I'm speaking the truth. That he and his government are hijacking the Hindu religion. And so there is a parallel between India and Israel and the West. So long as that parallel remains, it remains a hopeless state for the Indian Muslims. If that parallel is ever to be changed, we can't change it from outside. It is India's Hindus who will have to change it to ensure that India does not run on the same parallel line with Israel and with the West. And so our way forward is my parting statement. The way forward is to reach out to that part of Hindu India whose heart has not as yet been corrupted with eternal hatred for Islam and Muslims, and to establish dialogue with them with the hope that we're able to move forward in a positive way. I thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, so Jazakallah Sheikh for that. I just have one prepared question from India actually. Before I go to the audience, if they have any questions. So, brother asks from Batley in the UK. You're familiar with Batley in North England? Batley, Leeds, Bradford.
Never heard of Batley. Go ahead.
Okay. He's been listening to you for a long time and has returned to India about a month ago. He has a question for you regarding whether riba, tainted money, can be cleansed and used, or whether it should be gotten rid of, as its usage might only produce further problems as a result of Allah's punishment.
If you get riba money, the interest which is paid on a deposit, then I advise you, wait until it is dark. The sun has gone down. Invite all the family members and also the children. Then put a little light, with a candle to witness it. And then explain to them what is riba. And after you explain to them, you show them the money. This is the riba money I got. And then put some petrol on it and burn it. And your children will never forget that day. They will never forget that day. One fellow in Australia, he did it. He did it. This is dramatic way of dealing with the subject. You can also burn it, you can bury it, you could throw it in the river, whatever you want. But don't tell me you can use it to build the toilets in the masjid. Don't tell me you could use it to pay the interest on your loan and so on. No. What is haram is haram. You cannot change haram and make it halal. Okay, next. If anyone... Remember, if you're asking the question, you might have to repeat it 5 or 10 times, okay?
I'll repeat
because
it
my hearing is declining. Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh, and welcome to London, Sheikh. With everything happening in Ukraine, I was wondering if you're aware of, I don't know how to describe it, a theory which is going around, which is this is a longer-term issue between those who originated from Khazaria, who converted to Judaism 1,000 years ago, almost at threat by the Russians because of their behavior, and that they've harbored a hatred for Russia all the way through history. And the end goal really is the dismemberment and the eventual destruction of, Orthodox Russia, to bring it under their control once more. Are you familiar with this theory, or do you have any thoughts on that theory as well? And just one more small question on a personal level. I was actually, I am a journalist. I was a journalist. I used to work at RT, Russia Today. I left last year. And I was always, at the beginning of my career, encouraged and helped by a man called Morris, 108 Morris 108. And I was wondering if you had contact with his widow or his descendants, that we can support them, because I know that they were in some financial difficulty when he passed, and I haven't been able to get in touch with them myself.
But the problem is, when I answer him, I may not be answering the question he asked. Because I'm understanding part and I'm not understanding. About Morris. Is this working?
Yep.
About Morris.
Into the other one as well. Into the other.
May Allah have mercy on his soul, Morris. He was dear to me, and we met several times. And we had a very lovely friendship with each other. I knew that he died when he was in Cambodia. He was married in Cambodia and he had a child. But I have no contact at all with his family. But may Allah open a way for them. Morris was a very dear soul. His parents were Jewish, but he never followed that line of Zionism. Yes. I am not sure whether I understood your first question about the Caesarean people and an eternal hatred for Russia. I was not even aware of that.
Khazarians.
Khazaria. The Khazaria, yeah. The Khazaria is way back in the past. Way back in the past. We don't have the concrete Khazaria today. You can't recognize them today. But what we do have is the Zionist Judeo-Christian Alliance, which appears to have its roots in Khazaria. And the Zionist Judeo-Christian Alliance is at work in many parts of the world. We just saw it at work in Islamabad. And we saw it at work in Ukraine in 2014. But if we have, as Muslims, to make an assessment of the profile of Russia today, which is a post-Soviet Russia, post-communist Russia, post-atheist Russia, a Russia which is returning to her Orthodox Christian heart and soul. They have not completed that return. They are still trying to return. If we are, as Muslims, to make an assessment of that Russia, and we are to turn to the Quran rather than to political science and to political history, this is where, if ever Alexander, Dugin, and Imran were to come together, you see political science over there and Islamic eschatology will be very interesting if we ever meet. I don't know whether I'll get a Russian visa. But if we are to go to the Quran to make an assessment of Russia today, there is no way that we can avoid recognizing that Russia today is the room of the Quran. And room in the Quran is not Rome. Rome, when last I heard, was a city in Italy. That is Rome. And room in the Quran is not Rome. Room in the Quran is Constantinople. Room in the Quran is Orthodox Christianity or Eastern Christianity, which did not go fishing on the Sabbath. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Look at that. It's the Quran. Surah Al-A'raf. You've got homework to do. We don't have the time now to explain this fishing. But the room of the Quran was remain faithful to the law. Whereas that part which broke away and went to the West, they said, we don't care 2 peanuts for the law anymore. So that's why today a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate. The Quran speaks positively about Rome. The Quran says that Allah will help Rome. And Rome will be victorious. And it did come to pass in the lifetime of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. And the Quran says there are 2 victories. Min qabla wa min ba'd. And the second victory has not as yet come. Although so many commentators, because they have not studied eschatology, have declared that the conquest of Mecca is the second of the 2 conquests. Rome had nothing to do with the conquest of Mecca. And then finally, the Quran tells us that the people who follow Jesus, Allah will decide. You will not decide who is following Jesus. Don't bother. You will not decide that. Allah will decide. Don't bother. He will decide, not you, who is following Jesus. And Allah is going to raise them. وَجَعِلُوا الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوكَ فَوْقَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. Surah Ali Imran. And we're seeing it. Allah is going to raise them to a position of dominance over those who have rejected Him. And when He raises them to that position of dominance, they'll remain there until the end of the world. And I recognize it already, that Russia's sudden meteoric rise to military dominance in the world today is a fulfillment of this verse of the Quran. And Russia will remain there until the end of the world. If you have another view of the Quran, go ahead. This is mine. I have spent my entire life in the pursuit of knowledge. And I have been trained by great, great, great teachers, and I have been blessed with a methodology for the study of the Quran different from the Darul Uloom. But I always say, don't accept anything that I say unless you're convinced that I'm correct. So I have a positive view of Russia, and I support Russia in Ukraine, and Russia is winning the war in Ukraine despite the media. And Russia is willing to stop the war as soon as Russia achieves their objectives, stop the war. But the West does not want the war to stop. So I anticipate sometime soon that the war is going to expand. When it does, I will not be surprised. Other countries are going to become involved. I don't know if I answered your question. You don't have paper to write a question? Write your question.
Allah is my witness. I really love you. And I pray that Allah Ta'ala showers you.
I think it's better if you listen to him and then come and tell me the question, yeah.
Yeah, my question. I'm from Hyderabad, Uttarakhand, right? So we have a politician. I used to call him a political leader. He is a politician who has a. I am from Hyderabad.
I am not understanding you. Please, please, please. The hearing is bad. If you could kindly tell him the question, he'll come. I wish you had paper, you'd solve the problem. You don't have paper? No. London doesn't have paper.
We live in a digital world.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm from Hyderabad.
Yeah.
Uttarakhand.
Yeah.
We have a politician who wears a skull cap, who has a beard, he is a Muslim, and he is polarizing the Muslims against the Hindus. And constantly trying to imbibe hatred at all times. There is an analogy that says that he could be an agent from the other side, who is basically serving the purpose of polarizing the people. Sheikh Sab, you just told us that we need to be desperately, it's not going to happen from our side, it's going to happen from their side if it has to happen. The Hindu-Muslim fraternity, of us coming together, having a dialogue. How do you suggest, Sheikh, that I am a school teacher, I've got 500 students who study under political science and English language. How do you suggest that we establish, or try to establish, what are the attempts?
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, because there is no paper in London, you'll have to come up and ask your question, otherwise you have to repeat the question 500 times, okay? Now then, yeah, okay, good, we have paper, look at that, London has paper. Our brother is a school teacher in Hyderabad, in Deccan, and he has drawn my attention to the fact that there's one leader, one religious leader, who is doing the best he can to build hatred between Muslims and Hindus. And he could be a double agent. Okay? I mentioned at the beginning that this is not the work of one man. I will simply, in this lecture, make my input. Well, how do we solve the problem in India itself to carry forward this agenda of trying to build Hindu-Muslim fraternity and friendly dialogue? The answer is that you have to find in India the scholars who can do this work. I have heard of the names of some scholars, I don't remember the name properly, who are doing good work in India. So the way forward is that in addition to what I have offered today, you have to get other scholars at work now who will be able to take this forward in India itself, who have the knowledge, not just the knowledge of the Quran, but also the knowledge of the world, and who are able to use proper methodology for entering into dialogue with Hindus in order to succeed in building fraternal dialogue and fraternity. Yes, next question.
Yeah, Sheikh, I'm just going to read out the question for you. Is the conquest of India yet to happen as with Constantinople?
This is a reference to a hadith which prophesies something called Ghazwatul Hind. Those of you who believe that this hadith is authentic and this is going to happen, you kindly don't contact me to ask me for any assistance or guidance on this matter. Go ahead and wage your jihad. Go ahead and wage your jihad, but leave me out of it. My view is that I'm not comfortable with a hadith which is in conflict with what I get from the Quran. The way forward is not to conquer England, India once again. The way forward is what I have just spent 1 hour teaching you. Yeah.
Yeah, and the next one is, what is your advice for Muslims living in the UK if war reaches UK from Russia? I think they're referring to some of the news reports about UK being sunk by missiles from Russia. Shall they go back to India and Pakistan?
I have advised them so many times for such a long period of time, I'm tired. I'm tired. There are many who have accepted my advice and they've returned to Pakistan. Many of them have returned to Pakistan and they're building communities in Pakistan. There are others who are returning to India and Bangladesh. And then you ask me what to do if you choose to remain? This is a sinking ship. My eschatology tells me this is a sinking ship. If you have a different view, fine, that's yours. My eschatology is this is a sinking ship. And nothing will prevent it from sinking. I'm not talking about Britain alone, I'm talking about the West. And if you're on board this ship when it sinks, you will perish with everybody else. Nothing can prevent this from sinking. Read Surah Rahman, read my book, The Quran, the West. What is the name of the book? The Quran, the Great War, and the West. We have it at the back there, small book. The Quran, the Great War, and the West. That is what's coming. That book is at the back. If you are on the boat, on the ship, and you know that the ship is sinking, and nothing will prevent it from sinking, and if you remain on board the ship, you will perish with everybody else. What should you do? Answer: simple. If you still have the capacity to think, the answer is to get off the ship. That's what the young men did in Surah Al-Kahf. They got off the ship. What about Sheikh? But my wife doesn't want to leave. She said, this is heaven. The children say, Papa, we're not going back. That's hell over there. We like here. This is heaven. What to do? Your parents say, son, you cannot abandon your father and your mother here. We're staying here. We're not going. What do you do? I'll tell you what I'll do. I will get off the ship and leave everybody behind, because that's a sensible thing to do. And when I'm off the ship, I will then try to get them to follow me. At least this makes sense. Then rather than remaining aboard the ship and everybody will sink. Next question.
I'm not sure if you want to go into it. It sounds irrelevant to the topic. Can you please?
No, you want something relevant to the topic first, yeah.
Can you please shed some light in regards to Ghazwatul Hind? What should be our duty in the current time?
I just said to you, those who want to engage in another jihad to conquer Hind, go ahead. Don't leave me out of it. That's all. Just leave me out of it. Don't ask me for any guidance. Go ahead. My understanding of this hadith is that it is in conflict with everything that I've got from the Quran. And I spent 1 hour explaining to you what I've got from the Quran, that the way forward is not Ghazwatul Hind. The way forward is Hindu-Muslim fraternity. That's the way forward, yeah.
And what role do you see being played by the Muslims of Afghanistan in the liberation of Indian Muslims?
MashaAllah, that the Afghan Muslims know how to fight. Washington now knows that. But the Afghan Muslims don't have the intellectual caliber. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the education. Because the scholars are produced by the Darul Uloom. So while they are a part of the last shower of rain, of military rain, they're most certainly not a part of the last shower of intellectual rain. The last shower of intellectual rain won't come from Taliban. It won't come from any madrasa or any Darul Uloom. I went to Pakistan last year and I told them that I have spent all my life in the pursuit of knowledge and I've traveled extensively. Very few scholars have traveled as much as I have been traveling. And I have come to a conclusion that the last shower of scholarly rain, you remember the hadith? Meri ummat barish jaise. My ummah is like the rain. I don't know which shower is better, the first or the last. This is hadith. The last shower of scholarly rain, prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, will come from Pakistan. That's why I surprised them. They wouldn't come from the Darul Uloom. A Darul Uloom cannot produce Iqbal. A Darul Uloom cannot produce Maulana Fazlur Rahman Ansari, who is my teacher. And my scholarship cannot come from a Darul Uloom. The last shower of scholarly rain will come from Pakistan. But it won't come from Taliban. Taliban knows how to fight. And what I am doing now in these last years of my life, I don't know how much left, is planting the seeds for that last shower to come. And I am so astonished. Believe you me, I am astonished by young people who are coming forward and whose hearts have not been corrupted and who still have the capacity to think, and they have courage. Oh yes, it's a scarce commodity today in the market. Courage. The courage to stand up for the truth, regardless of the price you have to pay. Many can't do that. But I have found young people, mashallah, most of them in Pakistan, but elsewhere as well, in Africa, in Mombasa, in the Arab world, I'm constantly finding young people, like in Surah Al-Kahf, the Ashab al-Kahf. And this is what is going to take forward, not Taliban's scholarly work. Taliban military, yes, thank you.
Okay, I am a Muslim of African descent and wanted to ask if the Quran mentions anything about Africa and the end times. As we have a problem of a lot of people claiming to be prophets, how can Islam further help our people in Africa?
There is a lecture to be delivered in London at the beginning of June.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
On African Muslims, I think the way forward. So please wait for that lecture.
Yeah, next one.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. In your humble opinion, what would be the best country to relocate to with a budget of £500,000 or so?
When you want to make hijrah, look to see the river and look to see the fire. Because Dajjal comes with two things, a river and a fire. But his fire is a river, and his river is the cool waters of the fire. Okay? So I would not remain in Britain. I'd go back to Pakistan. Oh yes. I'd go back to, of course, I can't go back to Pakistan now when I'm telling the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces you're a Yankee puppy dog. Okay? Somebody has to tell it to him. I can't go back to Pakistan now when I speak like this. I prefer not to return to Pakistan, but have the freedom to call a spade. Yeah. But the mountains of the north of Pakistan, remember the Prophet said that the time will come when a believer will have to flee to the mountainsides and places where rain falls, and take with him some sheep and goats. And the mountains in the north of Pakistan qualify. The mountains of Albania qualify. Okay? So I would not remain in Britain. But so many have chosen, despite the fact they know me, they're listening to me, and they're not moving. They're remaining here. So don't ask me to help you when the fire comes. I will go back to Pakistan, I'll go back to Africa. Many have gone back to Africa after listening to me. Many have gone back. And they've gone back to Africa and they're building villages in different parts of Africa. Okay? So my answer to you is go back to where you came from, your forefathers. Go back to North Africa, to Algeria, to Morocco, to Tunisia. Go back to India, go back to Pakistan. And don't remain here.
Okay, Sheikh, you mentioned about Russia from the questions, so I'm picking up this question. Will Russia be the superpower or Israel?
This is a part of eschatology that it is better not to talk about. There are some things you must not reveal. And this is one subject I have consistently declined to reveal. But I have confidence in Russia and in the leadership of Russia. And I'm working, this is why I'm traveling, I'm working to build friendship and alliance between Orthodox Christians and Muslims. I don't think anyone is doing more than I'm doing, working. So I'm traveling now from here to Netherlands for the first time, but then I go to Armenia. Armenia is an Orthodox Christian country. And Azerbaijan is led by a Zionist stooge. Azerbaijan is led by a Zionist stooge. Yeah. So they are trying to foment war, Azerbaijan against Armenia, in order to drive the Muslim-Christian fraternity away from each other. That's what they're doing. So I'm going to Armenia to meet with the leaders, the Christian leaders in Armenia. My students are working now to try to arrange it. And then from Armenia, I'm going to Russia, if I can get the visa. Why? To build friendship and alliance. And then I'm going to Greece as well, because my book, Constantinople in the Quran, has been translated to Greek and printed, so we're going to launch the book in Greece. It's going to be a long road. It's a lonely road for me, but the caravan has to keep on moving. Yeah.
Okay, and what input does Modi have on the Russian-Ukraine war?
The Indian leadership has acted sensibly. They have pursued a sensible foreign policy. They have not allowed themselves to be beaten and broke by the West. They have resisted the West. And they have shown the capacity to resist the West, even while the West will not break relations with them. No. The West will not do to India what they do to others. Like they did to China, they did to Russia. They won't do that to India. India is too important. So India has shown great sense and intelligence in their foreign policy on the war in Ukraine. And Pakistan, under the former government, was doing the same. And then came the US dollars and regime change. And then you had a chief of staff of the Pakistan Armed Forces who revealed who he was now. And so Pakistan is now on the wrong road, and India is on the right road. This is our predicament. If we had scholars of Islam in Pakistan who had an understanding of what the Quran is directing us to on politics and economics, the Darul Uloom doesn't teach it. They don't teach it. They could have made it, they could have got the Pakistani people to understand this manifest betrayal of the Quran that is taking place with this regime change in Pakistan. So my understanding is India is moving on the right path. Pakistan is moving on the wrong path.
So there's a brother here from India, and he wanted to explain his situation and ask the question that he sees himself moving back to India not a viability because it is not friendly in India, especially where he is. He says it is not a place of peace. And what would you think? What is your advice to him if he's thinking about settling in the countryside here in this country?
There is an imperative in Islam to make hijrah when conditions of insecurity prevail. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet. But 200 million Indian Muslims cannot leave India. Doesn't make sense. And so we say to the 200 million Muslims of India, it is the leaders of the Indian Muslims, not Imran sitting in Trinidad, who have to devise the strategy of hijrah for Indian Muslims. Okay? The same thing applies with the Muslims of Gaza, the Muslims of Palestine. Okay, many Palestinian Muslims have migrated. Some of them I met so many of them in Brazil, I met them in Argentina, I met them in Colombia, I met them in Venezuela. Palestinians. But large numbers of Palestinians are still there in the Holy Land, and they're not moving. And there's no way for them to go. So it is the local leaders who have to determine the strategy for hijrah. I can't do that from outside. But when they call on us for help, we must be ready to help them. And there are so many who are helping them, and they're not Muslims. Many people in the West who are not Muslims are helping the Palestinians, okay? If you choose to remain in Britain, then I would suggest to you to get out of the cities and go to the remote countryside, but I don't think there'll be any Britain after the Great War. No one will be able to live here after the Great War. Russia has said we can destroy the whole of the United States in 1 hour or half an hour. And when Putin talks, people listen.
Okay, the next one is, I'm from Mauritius, and the Muslim population is suffering with the influence of the government which has close ties to the Indian government. What is your advice for them?
I have visited Mauritius several times, but I do not know sufficient on the politics of the country. You should turn for guidance from someone who has adequate knowledge of the subject. I don't have that adequate knowledge of the subject. I can't answer all questions, yeah?
Two more short questions.
Go ahead, we can finish, yeah.
Are Caucasians spread north, south, and east to west? Are the Caucasians spread north, south, east, and west? Are they Yajuj and Majuj tribe?
No. The footprints with which you recognize Gog and Magog, the footprints are number one. They're agents of fasad. Inna Ya'juj wa Ma'juj mufsiduna fil ard. A people who are Caucasian and righteous in their conduct cannot qualify as Gog and Magog. Number two, Gog and Magog are going to take the Jews back to the Holy Land. 2,000 years after Allah has expelled them and banned their return. Which surah of the Quran is this? Nobody can answer me? Anbiya is correct. MashaAllah Kamal. You see what's your position? If you study the Quran, Allah will raise you. This Quran will raise you. You're not studying the Quran. So you have to look for a footprint of a people who are obsessed with Israel, who want to defend Israel, who want to support Israel, who want Israel to become the ruling state in the world. It could be Caucasian and he opposes Israel. How could he be Gog and Magog?
Okay, and the last question for today. Jazakallah for your patience. Does Germany have an influence on the Russia and Ukraine war? Or if you prefer, what is your opinion moving from UK to Russia? Actually, that's that one actually.
Yes, Hijra to Russia, I would approve of that. About Germany and its role in the war in Ukraine, this is a question located in political science and political history. And the only input that we have from the Quran, which is to help us with analysis, is whether Germany remains a part of the West and therefore a part of the Judeo-Christian alliance, or whether Germany breaks away from the West. I don't see any evidence, even minimal evidence, that Germany will ever break away from the West and no longer be a part of the West. That seems to me to be a dream. I mean, this is not reality. So I expect that Germany will continue to be a part of the West and therefore to suffer the fate that now awaits the West.
Okay, Jazakallah Sheikh. It's perfectly timed. It's Maghrib's time. It's time for Salah.
ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين.
So books will be on sale after Maghrib, I'm guessing. And if you want your book signed, I think that will. Do you want that done now or
Yeah, after the salat.
after the salah? Okay. After the salah, you can get your book signed. Purchase your books, inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Ya Rabbi, assalam.
To people, yeah, but I might have started this. We could pray our salah here, and if everyone can, maybe just pick up your chair and just clear this area. That would be great. Maybe we can pray salah here instead. Yes.
Irish origin.
Yeah, don't forget it.
My brother is married to an Irish girl. My sister is married to an Irish girl.
A lot of Irish went to the Caribbean, I'm sure you know. MashaAllah.
Very nice people, the Irish.
I'm so glad. Island people. I just wanted to thank you. My question was Gizwat al-Hind. I was one of those questioners, and you.
And my favorite Irishman is George Bernard Shaw. We have a book over here, a very small one. George Bernard Shaw and the Islamic Scholar. When George Bernard Shaw met with the teacher, my teacher, in Mombasa, and they had a dialogue and it was recorded. I wrote a commentary on that conversation. It's there in my book. So George Bernard Shaw and the Islamic Scholar here.